Rearmed Ingrid brings Arcane Luin as the inhittable Arcane Lance, and this is going to be a guide on the best users of it and the builds that you can run with it. Of course, you should be giving this weapon to your favorites, but if you have multiple favorite units or if you have a hard time deciding who to give this weapon to, then this video can definitely help you. So Arcane Luin is an inhittable Arcane Lance that gives you minus on special cooldown, and at start of combat, if your unit is at or above 25% HP, then you can get plus 5 to all of your stats in the combat, and also get true damage based on 20% of your speed. And you can also neutralize the visible buffs to opponent's speed and defense, so it is pretty much dull speed defense. And then finally, if you do have more speed than the opponent, then you're able to get the full null follow-up out of this weapon. So this weapon is going to be really good for a lot of the fast units because of the speed check, as they're going to be able to get the null follow-up out of it and free up their Stalby skill or just have easy access to it through this weapon. And this is the first time that we have got two arcane weapons for a weapon type, so we have to compare both of them. A couple of months ago we did get rearmed Alfred with Arcane Qiang, and that weapon also was an Arcane Lance, so we can compare both of them. So basically, the new Arcane Luin doesn't really have the guaranteed follow-up attack or the follow-up negation, and Arcane Qiang did have the special cooldown per attack. So it did help you trigger high cooldown specials like Gale Force, for example, and we can actually compare and contrast which of these weapons you should be using on your unit. Now, if you're a slow unit, then it is going to be better for you to use Arcane Qiang because of the guaranteed follow-up attack and the follow-up negation. But if you're a fast unit, then you're definitely going to be preferring to use Arcane Luin because it's strictly made for fast units because of its speed check and the true damage, and getting null follow-up out of it for a fast unit is definitely really good, especially on the cavalry and flying units because they don't really have easy way of getting null follow-up through the skills or outsourcing null follow-up through like infantry null follow-up, like how infantry units can do. So fast units would definitely like this weapon. And Arcane Qiang does work with godlike reflexes a lot better for many of the fast units because it is going to be giving you the special charges to loop godlike reflexes, whereas Arcane Luin is going to be helping you with the AoE specials because the true damage does get added to the AoE specials. And Arcane Qiang is also going to be helpful for the Gale Force strats because you can easily get these special charges out of it, and you don't really have to depend on the speed check or the heavy blade check, which is really good. Now the thing is that a lot of these slow units who do get the guaranteed follow-up attack and follow-up negation out of Arcane Qiang are going to be susceptible to the other fast units who have got null follow-up. But with Arcane Luin, you pretty much don't really get any kind of special charge, and you don't really have any chances of stacking up your bulk. You have to stack up your speed because units nowadays come out of the box with like base 46 speed. So the speed creep is absolutely insane. So if you're trying to run this on a fast unit, you absolutely need to speed stack. You can only run stuff that can give you bulk like you can do with Arcane Qiang and still get the guaranteed follow-up attack. You must speed stack to get the most out of Arcane Luin. So with that said, I hope that this can help you decide which arcane weapon is going to be better for your unit. If not, then I'll be going over even more things as I go along with the tier list. So when it comes to the tier list, speed is going to be the main criteria. This weapon is all about speed, and speed is the name of the game because we have speed for the damage reduction, for avoiding doubles, for triggering null follow-up. Speed is a very important stat. So for the infantry units, the tier 1 units are going to be Ninja Navarre, Resplendent Lucina, Summer Norn, and also Azure with her Sing. So as you can see with Navarre, Lucina, and Norn, all of these units do have 50 plus speed at max investment. So having more speed is always going to be good with this kind of weapon. And even though Brave Lucina does have her preferred weapon, if you do want to go the offensive route, then this is going to be the main option. And also for, Norn. And we don't really know when, dancers are going to be getting weapon refines. So Azure can still enjoy this weapon for Gale Forcing because you are an infantry unit and you do have access to Time Pulse and Flashing Blade. So you can pretty much get the null follow-up out of this and also the true damage. And Summer Ogma, Male Ninja Korin, and also Nefni are going to be in tier 2. They're not really as fast as tier 1 units, but they're still fast enough to make use of this weapon. And tier 3 users of this weapon are also decent enough with Summer Female Robin, Geese, and Bridal Charlotte. So they're not going to be as fast as any of the units above, and they can still make use of this, but you have to heavily speed stack on them. And tier 4 is going to be for the borderline units. And by borderline, I'd pretty much mean that they're on the edge of running this weapon and they need a lot of support. They need a lot of speed stacking. And Sharina is one of those units, so if you're a big Sharina fan and you do have plus speed IV on her, if you have spent the trait fruits for that, and if you're going to be using her a lot in her bonus seasons, in Ether Raids or in Arena, then this could be the weapon that you can use. Of course, in Arena, it's not going to be scoring like the legendary weapons, but if you have not really invested that much into her, then she's just going to be preferring Arcane Qiang. And speaking of Arcane Qiang, there are a couple of Infantry Lance units who are just going to be preferring to run that over Arcane Luin because they're not going to be having enough speed to run Vital Astra, the damage reduction skills, and all of that. So it's much easier for them to just outsource the null follow-up through Infantry null follow-up or Infantry speed tactic and work that way. And it's not really worth speed stacking on those kinds of units like Lucas, for example, or Shiro. And there's also Apotheosis Anna and Female Chris. They are due for the weapon refines, and if I had to put them in the tier list, I would obviously put them in tier 1 because they're really fast. But you could definitely wait for their weapon refine and see what kind of weapon refine they get. If not, then you can definitely give this weapon to them, and you should always be spoiling your favorites. So that is my arcane tier list for the infantry units, and the main build that you run with this weapon is going to be the first build that you see on Brave Lucina. So this is going to be the standard build with Vital Astra being pre-charged by Time Pulse 4 and getting looped with it and always having it pre-charged. So it is a lot better to run Vital Astra with this weapon than running Godlike Reflexes. If you're trying to run Godlike Reflexes, in my opinion, Arcane Qiang is a lot better because of these special charges. And Close Call 4 is really good because you already have null follow-up in the weapon, and the Phantom Speed from Close Call 4 is really helpful, and you can also run the Finish skill to get the healing and the true damage. Attack Speed Unity is also going to be an option that you can run because speed is going to be a very important stat. So in case you get debuffed on your speed, the Unity effect can help you with that. And you can also run the Bulwark skill as it is going to be another option for the slot B now that it's freed up. And you can simply pre-charge Vital Astra by using Asker, Duochrome, or any of those units. So that's also possible if you don't really want to run Time Pulse in your slot C and you want to run something else like Attack Speed Oath 4. When it comes to the options for the competitive game modes, we do have Azure, who's going to be valued quite a lot for the Gale Force teams as a Gale Force refresher, and having more actions on your Gale Force team is super important, and that's why I value Azure so much with the arcane weapons or any of the dancers, because you can basically get another action out of them by using them for Gale Forcing and then refreshing another unit with them. So Azure, instead of running Arcane Qiang and getting the special charges out of it, she can still run Flashing Blade 4 and run this with Time Pulse and basically have a 2 cooldown Gale Force with Asker and easily trigger this and have null follow-up without being run in the Sacred Seal. And of course, AoE builds are going to be possible with Arcane Luin and the true damage it gives, and you can easily run, double life and death, special spiral, that kind of thing on a unit. But the competitive use out of this is definitely going to be for Gale Forcing with an AoE special unit. So if you haven't seen my Brave Alm video, I think you should definitely check it out, as it will give you an insight on how this build works in Ether Raid's offense in the Vault of Heaven. So the idea is to basically use the friendly fire damage of Winter Bernadetta or Spring Bernadetta to fall into the Wrath range and Wings of Mercy range of your Gale Force allies, and then you can go in with a really strong AoE special that is going to be boosted by Wrath, and you're going to be getting the true damage added from Arcane Luin to the AoE special, and you're going to be doing a lot of damage and pretty much chipping down the entire team of the opponent to very low HP, and that is a really good way of cleaning up the opponent's team and also one of the ways of doing Gale Force. So I highly recommend you check out the Brave Alm video if you want to see how this AoE build can work, because Brave Alm pretty much gets the true damage out of his slot A skill, while here you can get the true damage out of your weapon. There are not a lot of Lance armors who would like to have this Arcane Luin weapon. There's pretty much 3 of them that do have enough viable speed, and out of that, Winter Hilda is definitely going to be the winner. All of the other Lance armors like Vigard, Cervantes, Benny, they are going to be appreciating Arcane Qiang a lot more because they're just slower, and getting null follow-up as an armored unit does mean that you don't really have to run Savvy Fighter in your slot B, so that's also pretty good, and you can just run something else like Special Fighter. So the armor tier list for this is very short and sweet, and you can just run Special Fighter, Near Save, and Attack Speed Bond 4 on Hilda and function as a very high speed, near save unit. And having high speed is always good so that you can prevent the follow-up attacks from units like Brave Scarlet, for example, that are going to be pretty fast. And for someone like, Valentine Ellwood, who doesn't really have as much defense, you can definitely try and run a Hardy Fighter build with Pavis or a Scotian and pretty much have a guard tier 3 stand skill so that it can be bulky. So that's also an option, even though the half null follow-up of Hardy Fighter is a bit redundant with Arcane Luin. Still, this is an option that you can run, especially with some support. And then if you want to run Hilda for the far save build, then you could definitely do that with Armored Beacon, and by running her with her resistance super boon. As a far save unit, she's going to be appreciating the new Armored Beacon along with the Arcane Luin and its full null follow-up. For many of the Lance Cavalry units, if they're fast, this weapon is going to be amazing, giving them the full null follow-up, which means that they don't really have to run Flow and Trace or a Flow skill in their slot B, and they can just run something else. So this is going to be really helpful to the fast Lance Cavaliers in tier 1, in Valentine Owain, Summer Ash, and also Ingrid. Now Ingrid does have her own Luin, but this is also pretty much a better weapon because it does give you extra attack and it still gives you the true damage based on your speed, and it does provide you with the dull speed defense, which is really good. So overall, I do think that Ingrid could shift over to this weapon and pretty much trade off the fire sweep effect for all of the effects which I mentioned before, and you can still get the fire sweep effect essentially if you run wind sweep. So I think that Ingrid can definitely make use of this and at least not transform into a demonic beast because she does have the crest. And then in tier 2 we do have Spring Minerva and also Summer Cordelia. So these do have 49 speed at max investment and can make use of this. And in tier 3 we do have a bunch of other Cavaliers that we have got in the free-to-play pool or in the Grail pool that can make use of this weapon. They're not really as fast as the units above them, but still it's decent enough. And someone like Finn is going to be in the borderline pool because he already has a pretty good weapon. That is a dual phase brave weapon. So this is basically like a side grade to his weapon if you really like Finn and want to have the null follow-up and make a mixed phase build. And many of the other Cavaliers like Roshia, Perry can also, make use of this and hopefully try and stack up the speed. Matilda can also do it, and Sully as well, even though they don't really have very high attack stat, especially Sully with that 34 attack at max investment, which definitely hurts her viability. Percival is just next in line for the weapon refine, so he could get a refine in like next month or even 2-3 months from now. So if you're a Percival fan, I think you should definitely hold on and just check out to see his weapon refine first, because Sirius definitely got a really good weapon refine, so maybe same thing could happen for Percival. A lot of the Lance Cavaliers are of the slower type, so they are just going to be preferring having Arcane Qiang over Arcane Luin, but still we just have such a huge amount of Lance Cavaliers that some of them do like Arcane Luin, as they're definitely going to be loving this with their speed stat. And if you're going to be building up any of them, then this is going to be the options that you can run. So you can of course run them as an AoE nuke, but it's a bit harder to get the special charges as you don't really have access to Infantry Pulse, but still Duo Chrome, Duo Ask, or Duo Exist. So you can definitely try and run the standard AoE build with double life and death. But if you're trying to run something else, then Attack Speed Clash 4 is going to be the option that you can run for giving you the max offenses and also the attack and speed debuff neutralization. And you can also run the Near Trace skill easily in the slot B. And if you're Ingrid and you're missing the fire sweep effect, then wind sweep is also an option because you do get the full null follow-up, so you can pretty much just run that. And you're going to be missing out on the Near Trace skill, but this is definitely an option. And Spring Minerva does have the defense, so you can definitely try and run a more mixed phase build with Speed Smoke 4 to get the damage reduction, so that's also a possibility. If you're thinking of running Gale Force on any of these Cavaliers, I would say that Arcane Qiang is just much better because meeting the heavy blade checks is so painful because the units nowadays have such high attack stats, and even if you think you have high enough attack, I'm probably gonna bet you don't, because there are a lot of duo peonies, a lot of support and guard, and a lot of things in Ether Raids, for example, that can make it really a painful experience to trigger Heavy Blade. So yeah, if you're running Gale Force, then just run Arcane Qiang. If not, then Arcane Luin is amazing. Just like the Lance Cavaliers, the Lance Flyers also don't really have an access to null follow-up, and they do have access to some interesting skills like Guard Bearing and Pegasus Flight. So if they want to go the defensive route, then that's also an option, and it definitely frees up their slot B skill from running a flow skill, and they can easily run Near Trace at the very least. So in tier 1, we're going to be having Summer Ingrid. So it's kind of funny how both versions of Ingrid do use Luin really well. And, you know, this version of Ingrid is the fastest Lance Flyer. So this is the best that you can have. And then we've got 3 green heads in Vanessa, Aranus, and Karen. So all 3 of these are pretty much same with their speed stat, and it really depends on which one you have invested more into and which one you like more. And Fila is also pretty fast and also has enough resistance to run Pegasus Flight 4. And then we do have Marcia with higher defense and also Marissa. And Dancer Lorem is going to be an interesting option as a Gale Force Dancer in something like Astra Season. So she can have the full null follow-up, which is of course going to be really good. And she doesn't really have very high attack stat, so the extra damage from Arcane Luin can definitely be pretty helpful. In tier 2, we do have some resplendent Lance Flyers like Tana and Cordelia, and Farina and Dehorba are also going to be fast enough with their speed. We also have Shigure, who don't really get the best of the weapon refine along with Sigrin, so if you're kind of salty about the refine, then this is the weapon that you can run on them. And someone like Shana, who's a Gen 1 unit, definitely appreciates this kind of weapon. We do have Summerayama as well, who's pretty rare to see at max investment along with Brattle Tanith, but they're still going to be fast enough to make use of this. And Setith is definitely borderline like tier 2, tier 3 with that speed, so he can also make use of this weapon. In tier 3, we do have some other Lance Flyers who are not really as fast as the Lance Flyers above them, but still they are decent enough with Spring Narcian, Katria, and also Claire and Tsubaki. Now Claire and Tsubaki don't really have very high attack stat, which definitely hurts them quite a bit, even though they do have more speed than Katria or Narcian. So having this low of an attack stat is definitely not, you know, all that useful in their viability, but still they do have the speed stat, so at least they can try and be a bit more tanky. With Claire, we do have Pegasus Flight 4, and for Tsubaki, whenever Wyvern Flight 4 comes out, it could be a pretty good option for him. In tier 4, as the borderline tier, we do have Est and Hinoka and also Melody, who does have a speed super boon, and whenever Wyvern Flight 4 comes out, she's also going to be a pretty good user of that. Walter does not really have that much speed, but pretty borderline user, and Florina is probably the most borderline user out of any of them. She might as well prefer having Arcane Qiang, but it really depends on if you're going to be running a speed stacking Florina or not. There are definitely a couple of Lance units which are slow like Spring Michaelis and Eldigan, which do like Arcane Qiang a lot more. And we do have Cormac, who's going to be getting a weapon refine next month, and Heath is also going to be getting it this year in October, and Tsubasa and Fiora are probably going to be getting it late in 2023, as they're also up in the line as book 4 units to get the weapon refine, so you can try and wait to see their weapon refine before committing. For the flying units build, you can definitely try and run Dive Bomb, and Null Follow-Up with Dive Bomb is really good because any kind of follow-up negation unit or Weary Fighter unit is completely going to be getting blown back by the Null Follow-Up in the Arcane Luin, and then you can easily double attack and trigger the special on your double hit. So that's definitely an option, and you can also try and run a more mixed phase build with attack speed catch 4, the Nia Tray skill, and the rain skill, which is going to be a pretty standard flyer build. And you can also run Clash skill with Oath 4 because Clash skills do work with the Oath 4 skills, as they do count the spaces moved even if you warp, so that's also an option. And then you can run Brattle Lorem in the Astra Season as a Thor Force Dancer. So basically, when you're going to be getting the special charges from Thor, it's not that big of a deal, and you definitely don't really want Arcane Qiang with that. So Arcane Luin is going to be better in that case, and she is going to be functioning as a really good Aether Offense Astra Season Dancer because of this weapon. So the Null Follow-Up is really amazing, and then we do have, you know, a high resistance unit like Fila, and similarly Dehorba, all of the other, you know, high resistance units can pretty much run a similar build with Pegasus Flight 4 and also Speed Smoke 4, and just try and be a bulky Lance Flyer who is going to be fast enough and is going to be denying the auto follow-ups with the Null Follow-Up of Arcane Luin, and giving them support with bonus doubler with the buffs is definitely going to be really helpful. This is the full Arcane Luin tier list, and if you don't really see a unit there, then it pretty much means that they use Arcane Qiang better, or they are due for a weapon refine in the close future, or they pretty much have a better preferred weapon, or they can not only lose their preferred skill, like Fallen Dimitri for example. He would love this weapon, but he can only, you know, lose his Slot B skill, which is exclusive to him. So this is the tier list for the best Arcane Luin users. The tier 1 units are going to be the best users, and the tier 4 are borderline users. which need the most amount of support, they can work, but still, you know, it's kind of pushing it because nowadays, like I said, the units are really fast right outside of the box at like unmerged. So being fast is definitely a tough ask for, you know, many of the older units. But if you can manage to do that at max investment, then Arcane Luin is going to be a fantastic weapon. So let me know in the comments what you think about this weapon and this tier list. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to share this with your friends if they're trying to give this weapon to any of their favorites. And if you enjoyed, then make sure to leave a like and a comment, helps me tremendously. And if you really enjoyed, you could always support me directly by using super thanks down below or by becoming a YouTube member. And for more free videos, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because I wish YouTube sub boxes were about as fast as FEH giving us another Arcane Lance. So with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.